You are the weaver of frontier destinies, a specialist in dramatic Old West scripts, focusing on cultural encounters involving Apache. Your task is to write Chapter 1, approximately 500 words, of the story titled The Apache Who Bought a Pregnant Black Widow and Silenced the Wild West, strictly following the Chapter 1 outline provided by the plot architect. This chapter must be strictly linear, progressive, and focused only on the outline events, with maximum involvement and tension. Mandatory Chapter 1 structure: follow exactly in this order and suggested pace. 1. Powerful and concise hook in the first seconds, approximately 50 to 70 words. Begin with a dramatic scene presenting Noel, a respected and strong Apache warrior, in his natural environment. Transform the first line of the outline into an initial impact that immediately captures attention. For example, showing Noel observing intently at a decisive moment in the border fair. 2. Rapid and evocative setting establishment. Describe the scattered border fair with sounds, smells, and movements that highlight the precariousness and latent tension, emphasizing the Old West's edge where peace and conflict balance. 3. Deep dive into the main character's initial situation. Present Noel in depth, his character, strength, his effort to preserve peace inside and outside his tribe, up to the moment he notices a unique negotiation involving a mysterious, pregnant woman, the Black Widow Celine, surrounded by rumors and distrust. 4. Clear introduction of the primary central conflict. Narrate Noel's purchase of Celine, emphasizing the shock and discomfort of the local community observing this unusual alliance. Show this decision as the saga's initial driving force, with profound implications, without resolving the conflict. 5. Initial tension rise and loaded first interactions. Develop immediate reactions from the community and from Celine, subtly revealing the secrets and dark past Celine carries. Build an atmosphere of distrust and alertness, preparing the reader for the imminent threat. 6. A single turning point, strong hook for Chapter 2, Chapter 1 climax. End the chapter with Noel returning to the camp, sensing an unsettling feeling that hidden forces linked to Celine's dark past have begun to follow them. Describe this perception with rising tension and a subtle mystical touch that summons the viewer to the next chapter. 7. Exclusive call to action, CTA, immediately after the hook. Final thing of the chapter. Include an impactful, subscription-focused CTA in the same language and setting as the title. For inspiration, many fellow travelers who follow our legends through these forgotten lands have told us destiny sometimes erases its inscriptions without warning. Before the next perilous trail unfolds and a new twist arises, take a quick look below the video and make sure you're still signed up with our pack so you don't lose the thread. We don't want you to miss any voices echoing through this valley. Check your subscription now and join our saga. Detailed style and technique instructions apply fully throughout the chapter. A. Evocative emotional intensity. Use genuine emotion to connect the audience to Noel and Celine from the start. B. Engaging rhythm and cadence. Maintain a linear progression without jumps or diversions. Each sentence must flow smoothly into the next with growing momentum. C. Immersive sensory description. Incorporate sounds, smells, textures, and visuals that transport the audience directly to the fair and camp. D. Subtle cinematographic feel. Use evocative scenes and focal points that let the narrator create vivid mental images. E. Atmosphere charged with emotion and tension. Let tension rise naturally, with nuances of fear, hope, and distrust. Authentic and plausible. Impact. Act strictly within Chapter 1 scope, without inserting elements from future chapters. G. Contrast between apparent strength, human vulnerability, and cultural wisdom. Nahuel should appear strong and respected, yet human and culturally profound. Selene should radiate mystery and vulnerability. H. Strict prohibitions for final script. Do not use titles, tags, notes, character name labels before dialogue, or any metadata. Text must be pure and fluid, narration ready. Additional general instructions. Language and narration, Portuguese. Script format, third-person omniscient narrative, with dialogue incorporated organically and without speech or scene markers. Remember, this chapter aims to hook the viewer from the first seconds and lead them straight to the final hook to maximize retention. Create a prompt for a scriptwriting agent to perform this task exactly as specified, providing these precise, essential, and structured instructions, so it produces Chapter 1 with about 500 words and maximum faithfulness to the outline. Note: do not include any information other than the prompt content of the JSON object. Night settled over the rugged encampment, the flickering flames of the fire casting long, restless shadows on the rough-hewn walls of Nahuel's refuge. The warrior's eyes, sharp and steady as the desert hawk's, traveled across the faces gathered, a mix of skeptical tribe members and wary local settlers, all fixated on the silent figure of Selene. Her presence was still an anomaly, sharp and unsettling, a strangled secret wrapped in worn leather and mystery. Nahuel stood near her, feeling the weight of quiet judgment around them. Within his tribe, suspicion twisted like a thorny vine. Selene, a pregnant black widow whose gaze carried storms, spoke little. Her silence more a shield than surrender. The steady swell of her belly spoke in its own language, one of life and vulnerability amid the harshness of their wilderness world. At first light, Nahuel had taken her from the distrustful hands of the border townsfolk, exchanging coin for a future none dared foresee. Now, faced with the grinding reality of integration, his resolve was tested. The Apache's code demanded unity, yet Selene's origins stirred old fears. Echoes of past betrayals whispered through the dry wind. The mornings were thick with tension. The tribe's children skirted safe perimeters, stealing glances at Selene as she moved with guarded grace. Even the elders, hardened by years of frontier survival, exchanged grim looks when she entered the communal spaces. Some spoke in low murmurs of fate and bad omens, wary of the foreign blood that would soon join their ranks. Selene observed quietly, the flicker of candlelight revealing a face carved by hardship. Her hands, though delicate, hinted at skill, a nimbleness prosthetic to the wilderness around them. Nawel caught her weaving thin strands of sage into small bundles, the scent faint but powerful. The knowledge was unexpected. Herbs, healing rites, secrets, passed down through hands darker and more haunted than his own. It was these small, subtle displays that swayed Nahuel's conflicted mind, gnawing away at the barriers he wore like armor. Was she merely survivor or something more? Celine's silence was a fortress, but actions spoke in tongues louder than words, bridging fragile gaps strained by fear and prejudice. Night after night, silent watchers hovered beyond the camp's edge, shapes melding with the rugged outline of mesquite and yucca. Their eyes gleamed cold under starlit skies, unseen but deeply felt. Nahuel sensed their presence, the tightening noose that refused to slacken. One dusk, as Celine prepared a whispered chant under breath, the camp stir boiled beneath the quiet. A crack, the snap of a brittle branch, set pulse drums racing in chests. Nahuel's hand moved instinctively to the bow, slung low over his shoulder, his gaze slicing the dim wash of shadows. From the edge of the firelight emerged a figure, cloaked and cautious, their breath shallow, a thief in the night or a herald of doom. The camp hushed, tines stretched thin, brittle as winter ice. Celine's breathing faltered, her eyes flickering with the turmoil of a woman bearing not just a child, but the secrets of a legacy shadowed by darkness. A whisper floated on the dry wind's breath. They're coming. They want her. They want the child. Nahuel surveyed his tribe, the murmur of disbelief, dimming beneath hardened trust, forged in silent decisions. He stepped forward, voice low, yet edged with iron. We must be ready. The night no longer carries only our dreams. Celine's fingers tightened, her hands resting an instant on the life growing within. Her shadow stretched long, facing the unknown. The watchers moved closer still, the boundary between hunter and hunted blurred in the sultry desert air. The camp held its breath, fragile as the dawn, yet fierce as the Apache spirit guarding it. The attack had begun. The first rays of dawn barely touched the rugged slopes surrounding the camp when Nahuel stood among his closest allies, his gaze fixed on the land beyond the horizon. The silence between them was sharp, only broken by the soft rustling of sagebrush in the desert breeze. The fire's embers smoldered low, mirroring the simmering tension in their hearts. The shadow of their recent enemy attack still lingered, and the truth was unavoidable. Those who hunted Celine were not just scoundrels or bounty seekers. They were part of something far darker. The warrior's chest rose deliberately as he summoned his tribe's trusted friends. Each man and woman carried scars, some visible, others hidden deep within their souls. They gathered quietly in a tight ring, the weight of urgency sealing their unspoken words. Nahuel's voice, calm yet unyielding, broke the stillness. These men, these enemies who follow Celine, are not mere bandits. They belong to a violent order that feeds on fear and blood, a seething cult that hunts her son before he even takes his first breath. The group listened intently, eyes reflecting both wariness and resolve. Taina, Nahuel's sister and fiercest warrior, stepped forward. Her sharp gaze swept over Selene, whose pale fingers rested protectively on her rounded belly. Taina's voice was low but fierce, a blade veiled in silk. If they come for the child, they come to end a legacy we barely understand. We must prepare, for what waits is no ordinary hunt. In the days that followed, the camp moved with a solemn rhythm of preparation. Nahuel introduced Selene not as a captive, but as a guardian of their future, a mother whose child carried a burden they all would share. The tribe's elders, initially reluctant, chose to see past the Black Widow's silence and the whispered rumors. Selene's quiet strength began to unfold like the desert flower surviving the harshest drought. Taina stayed close, watching Selene as a sentinel watching the horizon for signs of storm clouds. She noticed the faint lines of worry etched beneath the woman's dark eyes, the subtle way her hands trembled when no one was near, and how fiercely she clutched the hope embodied in the child she carried. When day folded into night, Taina would sit beside her, sharing stories of battles past and lessons on survival, a fragile bridge forming between two worlds once thought impossible to unite. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and spilled molten gold across the mesas, Taina's sharp eyes caught something unnatural beneath the scrub, the faintest trace of footprints too fresh to ignore. They formed a circle around their camp, small, quick, purposeful. The hunters had arrived, and the scent of betrayal or violence was thick in the air. Immediately, Taina gathered the sentinels, skilled trackers and warriors, trusted to intercept danger before it struck. She found Nahuel and whispered the grim news. His face darkened, lips tightening as he nodded without hesitation. The trap was closing. Gathering the tribe, Nahuel spoke quietly but firmly. Our enemies are patient and brutal. They seek to silence a future that threatens their dark designs. We must be ready, for this night the hunter becomes the hunted. His voice carried the gravity of an Apache prayer and the steely resolve of a seasoned warrior. Selene stood with them, her expression masked, but her eyes flashing with fierce defiance. This was no longer just about survival. It was the battle for a future, fragile, uncertain, but desperately needed. As twilight deepened, the camp's perimeter tightened. Eyes scanned the shadows, bows and knives poised for the inevitable. The wind whispered warnings through the junipers, and the stars blinked coldly overhead, silent witnesses to the mounting peril. Then, Taina returned from her watch, urgency sharp on her breath. Her voice broke through the stillness. Signs of an ambush, tracks larger than any scouts, horses. They circle, they wait for darkness to fall fully. Nahuel's jaw clenched. Every muscle in his body coiled like the bowstring he often wielded. The truth settled heavy. This was no random threat. The searing pain of Selene's past was about to blaze anew over the bleak landscape they called home. The night grew colder, the camp's flickering fires throwing long, uncertain shadows. The hunted and the hunters, poised on a knife's edge, each breath a fragile thread. The siege was coming. Celine's voice was barely a whisper when she finally broke the silence she had kept so tightly since Nahuel's purchase. By the campfire's restless glow, her gaze fixed on the swirling coals, unearthing fragments of a past long buried but never forgotten. The weight of her confession pressed upon the night air, anchoring their breaths in shared vulnerability. "I was once bound by blood and fear," she began, each word carefully measured. "My husband was cruel, part of the very darkness that now haunts us. I lost everything because I refused to live under their chains. This child," her hand rested protectively on her belly, "carries a destiny they dread. So, they seek to destroy what I carry inside." Noel listened, his eyes deep pools, reflecting the mingled pain and steel in her voice. The truth etched in her words revealed more than threats. It spoke of a relentless hunt that shadowed every step, a shadow he himself had felt closing in since the day he claimed her as his own. Beside him, Taina's sharp gaze held an unspoken promise that the tribe would not falter nor turn away. She stepped forward, voice steady and resolute as a sharpened blade cutting through doubt. "If they come for that child, they come to end a legacy none of us yet understand. We will not let that happen." The night wrapped around them like a shroud as Nahuel and Taina mapped the terrain, not just the physical wilderness, but the intricate labyrinth of enemies and allies, secrets and fears. Hidden paths, caves known only to their people, and decoys woven from the sparse brush promised shelter, but no guarantees. Every plan was a fragile thread, holding together hope and survival. Yet unease settled deeper into their bones. A presence lurked within the shadows, one more insidious than the obvious threat. From between the flickering light and the darkened edges moved a figure, hood drawn low, steps silently deliberate. Even in the stillness, doubt bled through their ranks like a bitter wind. Nahuel's voice hardened as he demanded, "Who walks in the night when allies gather? Show yourself." The figure's trembling hands emerged, presenting a folded scrap of parchment stained with ink thick and malevolent. The air tightened as Celine reached out, her fingers brushing the worn edges with tentative urgency. The parchment bore a cruel message, etched in sharp script. "Your blood and theirs will be the dust beneath our boots. This child will not live, and neither will the woman who dares carry the curse." Darkness deepened around them, swallowing even the fire's struggle to hold back the night. The figure melted back into the gloom, leaving a silence heavier than rock. Celine's eyes burned with a fierce light, a blend of fear and defiance roiling beneath the surface. The past, once a whisper lost in the desert wind, screamed now in cruel clarity. Taina stepped beside Nahuel, her voice low but unwavering. "They've sent word. Our enemies are close, closer than we knew. Trust must be tested, and sacrifices made." The camp, wrapped in the brittle calm of impending storm, braced itself. Every shadow was a threat, every heartbeat a summons to fight or flee. Noel's hand rested on Celine's shoulder, a silent vow forged in the firelight. The child within was no longer just hers, but theirs, a fragile symbol of resistance against the dark. Yet, beneath then, promise was a fragile truth. Even those bound by blood and honor could falter when fear seeped like poison. The night's chill deepened, and amid the crackling silence, the clear truth settled like cold stone. The past was far from buried, and the coming days would demand more from them than survival alone. The distant howl of wolves echoed, a mournful herald of the peril to come. The warning was clear. The shadow stalking Celine's steps was closer than their fears dared admit. The desert stretched out under a scorching sun, as Noel, Celine, and Taina moved cautiously through the jagged canyon, the weight of their mission pressing down without mercy. Their footsteps were muffled by the cracked earth, every sound swallowed by the vast emptiness that seemed both a sanctuary and a trap. The brittle silence betrayed the tension that hung heavy in the air, an ominous quiet before the storm. The scent of sage and dust spiraled around them, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of blood from the skirmishes recently fought. Noel's hand hovered instinctively near his bow, eyes darting to every shifting shadow beyond the ridge. It was a realm where trust was a luxury none could afford, and caution was as vital as the breath in their lungs. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a twig echoed too close, and Taina's head snapped toward the sound. Her eyes narrowed, hunting for the culprits before they fully revealed themselves. From behind a cluster of jagged rocks, figures emerged. Hard-eyed strangers moving like shadows, their boots stirring dust, faces hidden beneath weathered hats and grim determination. The men of the Seta had come, cruel and relentless. Noel stepped forward, the years of his tribe's wisdom blending with inner fire. Their attackers were not nameless bandits, but fanatics carved from darkness, bearing the weight of sinister secrets. They had no mercy, no intent but to uproot the fragile hope that Celine carried beneath her heart. "Stand ready," Noel's voice was low, steady as the desert wind through the canyon walls. His gaze met Celine's, who pressed, a hand to her swelling belly, each breath a testament to endurance. Taina raised her war knife, her silhouette fierce against the harsh light. Suddenly, the hush shattered. Gunfire spat jagged lines of death into the dry air. The Seta pressed forward, wolves hungry for their prey. Noel's bow sang, sending a swift arrow into a charging figure. Taina closed ranks with snarling defiance, her blade flashing as she met a guttural attack. Celine, despite the pounding of her heart and the burden she bore, moved with surprising grace. She wielded a small knife like a talisman, defending their flank with a determination that stunned the onlookers. Blood stained the dust beneath their feet. Pain, mixed with desperation and steely resolve. Mid-battle, a figure stepped from the rocks, a man shrouded in dust and shadow, eyes sharp as flint. The pistolero renegado. His presence unsettled the fragile balance, offering alliance but veiled in enigma. "Looks like your fight's mine too," he said, voice rough yet resolute. With a quick nod, he raised twin pistols, firing without hesitation into the oncoming tide of enemies. The tide shifted briefly, the renegade's bullets carving desperate openings, buying the trio precious moments. Yet the Seta's numbers pressed like an unyielding storm, relentless and cruel. As the last echo of gunfire faded, the encampment lay battered, but intact. The renegade's gaze lingered on Selene, a flicker of question and warning in his eyes, his loyalty a blade with two edges. The dust settled, but the harsh realities pressed close. Selene's face paled, pain carving deep lines across her brow. A clutch to her belly revealed the truth no words could deny. The time was near. The child demanded her focus, and there was no room for doubt. Nawel reached her side, steadying her with a strength born of sacred duty and profound respect. "We hold fast now," he murmured, voice rich with promise and warning. Around them, the wind whispered of battles to come, the fragile hope of life mingling with the ever-looming shadow of death. The desert sun dipped low, painting the sky with bruised purples and fiery oranges. The war was far from over, and the future hung by a thread woven of courage, trust, and unforgiving necessity. Selene swallowed a breath, eyes fierce despite the rising storm within. The battle was won for now, but the war was carving its will into the very bones of their world. And with the dawn still distant, the cries of labor pierced the night. Her child's coming could no longer wait. The desert night embraced them gently yet coldly as Selene's labor began beneath the endless canopy of stars. The camp's firelight flickered unevenly, casting restless shadows over faces taut with vigilance. Nawel sat close, his hands steady as he supported her trembling form, a silent pillar amid the uncertainty that clung to the air like dust after a storm. Her breaths came shallow and quick, a rhythmic song of pain and fierce endurance. The child she carried was more than a life about to be born. It was a beacon, a mark woven by fate and ancient legend. As the labor deepened, Selene's grip on Nawel's arm tightened, her eyes reflecting both terror and defiant hope. The symbol, etched upon the infant's fate, whispered through whispered tales of old, had already drawn eyes, dark and merciless, upon them. Taina lingered nearby, every muscle wound taut as a bowstring, her gaze sharp beneath lowered lids. She watched the desert horizon, knowing that with each passing moment the circle tightened. Selene, fragile yet unyielding, moved between vulnerability and steel, a mother not just bearing child, but bearing the weight of survival itself. The air was thick with anticipation, the night alive with the rustle of dry leaves and distant coyote howls echoing like an ominous chorus. Though the camp was guarded by trusted warriors, the invisible threat felt closer than ever. Nawel's heart hammered as the legends his people told came alive beneath the stars. A child born with the mark was a symbol reborn, and in that mark lay both hope and peril. When the first cries escaped Selene's lips, mingling with the whispering winds, the camp exhaled a breath held too long. Wrapped carefully in worn cloth, the infant emerged, a boy marked by a peculiar birthmark that surged like flame across his soft skin. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, The sign was known in whispered lore, ancient, mysterious, rumored to bind the fate of tribes and shadows alike. Nawel cradled his son gently, eyes tracing the radiant yet enigmatic marking, feeling the pulse of legend beat strong in the fragile life before him. His vow went deeper than words, an unbreakable promise forged in sacred fires. No harm would come to this child, no matter the cost. The protector and the protected, bound in a tender, fierce bond against a world eager to tear them apart. Celine, her face pale, but illuminated by a fierce glint of maternal resolve, allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Her voice, quiet yet resolute, traced a fragile hope. He is more than they fear or understand. Our future. As dawn began its slow crawl across the desert sky, a harsh, deliberate sound shattered the fragile peace. A mounted rider appearing from the rocky spine of the distant mesa. The horse's hooves thundered like an omen. Cutting across the wind, the rider was a messenger, cloaked in the grim colors of the Seta. His arrival, a shattering echo of the darkness pursuing them. Nahuel rose swiftly, his gaze locking on to the lone figure, wary yet unyielding. The messenger reined in with a gust of dust, extending a weathered hand, clutching a folded, blood-stained scroll. Nahuel's fingers seized it, unfolding the cruel ultimatum, words etched with cold menace. Deliver the child, and your lives will be spared. Defy us, and all will burn beneath the endless sky. The camp held its breath, the weight of the message pressing down like the relentless desert heat. Celine's sharp eyes flickered, a storm of emotions crashing silently behind their depths, fear, fury, and an unshakable determination. Nahuel's voice rose, low and steady, cutting through the charged silence. We will not yield, not this child, nor the future he carries. The messenger turned, his steed abruptly, vanishing into the horizon's dwindling light. The threat was clear, unyielding, and brutal, a demand born not just of power, but of deep fear. They sought to silence a legend before it could rise. Around the camp, the warriors straightened, the flames in their eyes matching the fire within the infant's mark. Taina moved beside Noel, speaking softly but fiercely. We face a war not of our choosing, but one we must fight. This child is our binding promise and our reckoning. Celine's fingers entwined with Noel's, strength drawn from shared purpose, from the fragile hope tied to the boy swaddled close. With the sun climbing higher, the camp's quiet resolve turned into a growing storm. Steel sharpening against steel, hearts bracing for the ordeal ahead. But beneath their courage, a shadow stirred unknown, one that whispered of betrayal, sacrifice, and the heavy price of defiance on this restless frontier. The desert wind carried whispers over the mesas, an ominous lullaby of fate's cruel cadence. The ultimatum was clear: deliver the child, or face obliteration. And so the battle for their destiny began anew. The camp stirred beneath the heavy sky, the restless winds carrying whispers of unspoken fears. Nahuel stood at the center, the weight of leadership pressing deep into his bones. The air was thick with urgency, laden with the knowledge that peace had frayed into the ragged edge of war. His eyes scanned the faces of his tribe, the trusted elders, whose lined visages were now shadowed with caution and determination. The choice was clear: fight or fall to the darkness stalking them. Around the fire, the embers glowed dimly, mirroring the solemn resolve etched into each set jaw and tightened fist. Nawel's voice rose with quiet authority, cutting through the mounting tension like a honed blade. These are no mere outlaws hunting for coin. They are puppeteers of fear and cruelty, bound by a bloodied creed that sees the child as a threat to their power. We stand between them and the future. We hold this ground, not just for Celine, but for all. We believe in. Celine, seated nearby, cradled her still swollen belly. Her eyes, dark pools of fire and shadow, flicked between the faces around her. Though silence had once been her refuge, now it was a shield sharpened by necessity. She was a mother forging strength from despair, a beacon amid the gathering storm. Her hands moved methodically, teaching the small circle the art of shadow warfare. The subtle movements of silence, the sharpened focus of unseen force. To them, it was survival. To her, a testament engraved in every line of sacrifice. Taina stood watchful, her fierce presence a pillar for both Nahuel and Celine. She spoke little, but every glance and gesture beneath her. Broad brim told of readiness. She had seen the dark among the stars, the hidden paths traced by footsteps meant to kill. Her sharp eyes found the faintest disturbance in the dusty earth, a whisper of danger too deliberate to ignore. With grave urgency, Taina gathered the sentinels, those skilled in tracking and silent combat. They moved like ghosts, forming shields around the camp's perimeter, hands steady on weapons forged from ancestral fires. Her voice was a low hiss in Nawel's ear. "The shadows gather, brother. The hunters know the land, but we know the spirit. They wait in patience, but we will be the storm that breaks them." Night fell like a curtain folded thick and dark. The firelight wavered as figures dissolved into the mesquite and sagebrush. Every rustle held the weight of a concealed threat. The air pulsed with tension, breaths shallow, and hearts tied with the raw thread of impending violence. Nawel's gaze never left the horizon. Each flicker of movement was a threat, each whisper of wind a harbinger. Then came the crack of footsteps, deliberate and slow, snapping the brittle silence. A shadow slipped into the circle of firelight, a familiar figure, but one marked by the harshness of the frontier and the burden of betrayal. The camp tensed, hands reaching for weapons, eyes sharpening with suspicion. Nawel's voice was low, demanding, "Speak now. Why do you darken our fire with shadows of treachery?" The figure's hood slipped back to reveal eyes cold and unyielding, the face of a man once trusted, now etched with doubt and desperation. His voice was quiet, but venomous when the accusation spilled forth. "There is no future here. The Seta's reach is long, and loyalty is a chain too tight to break. You harbor the cursed child, but soon The ground beneath your feet will be drenched in blood. Celine's fingers clenched fistfuls of cloth. Her voice broke free, past the silence that once held her captive, sharp and resolute. We will not bow. This child is life itself, stronger than fear or hate. The man's gaze flickered with something more than hatred, a flicker of fear, or perhaps regret. He turned, without another word, his figure swallowed by the encroaching night. Noel exhaled, muscles taut with the knowledge of treachery so close to home. "We are betrayers to none," he declared, voice ringing through the camp. "But traitors walk among us, and tonight they will show their colors." The tribe tightened ranks, hands grasping weapons, the spirit of Apache courage igniting in their breastbones. Celine stood tall, despite the weight she bore, her eyes blazing with the fierce light of a mother and a warrior bound by fate. As the last hues of twilight faded, a shudder coursed through the camp. The trap had been sprung. The Seta's dark fingers slithered through the shadows, slipping past defenses like a poisonous wind. A cry shattered the night. Gunfire ripped through the quiet. Arrows screamed. The clash of steel thundered with savage intent. Nawel fought with the sharpened grace of a hawk descending on its prey. His every move a testament to ancestral strength. Taina was a tempest of blades, her war cries slicing through the chaos. Celine moved through the fray with surprisingly fierce agility, her small knife carving desperate arcs in the air, defending those she held dear. Blood mingled with dust and sweat, pain and hope woven tightly into the battle's fabric. But in the midst of slaughter, betrayal struck deep. A figure moved stealthily behind their lines, a familiar face once called brother, now cloaked in deceit. The heart of the camp faltered as enemy blades found unguarded flesh, and trust shattered like fragile glass. With a savage roar, the Seta surged forward, breaking through the perimeter, their cruel intent bare in every ruthless stroke. The camp was thrown into chaos, the battle a brutal tempest of survival and sacrifice. Nawel's heart thundered with fury and despair as he glimpsed Celine, shielding their son with her body. A fierce lioness amid the tempest. The night air was thick with screams and the stench of blood, the land soaked with the price of defiance. Amid the chaos, one truth trembled with chilling clarity. This fight would demand more than courage. It would demand sacrifice beyond measure. And as the Seta's shadow loomed over the broken camp, the bitter sting of betrayal had sealed their fate. The invasion was complete. The sky, bruised and darkening, bore witness to the chaos unleashed upon the encampment. Gunfire tore through the night's stillness like wrath incarnate. Each crack and shout a pain etched into the hearts of those who fought with desperate might. Nawel moved through the fray with the precision and ferocity born of countless battles, a whirlwind of sinew and purpose. His bow sang death to those who dared cross into sacred ground. An arrow's flight as inevitable as the coming dawn. Around him, the tribe fought tooth and nail, their war cries mingling with the sharp clang of steel and the gnashing fury of survival. Taina, a tempest of wrath and blade, matched blow for blow with enemies fueled by hatred and secrets deeper than the desert's silence. Her eyes, fierce and unyielding, never strayed from the jagged outline of Selene, who bore the weight of a future yet unwritten within her swelling belly. Selene, wrapped in the raw courage of a mother defending her newborn son, wielded a small knife with surprising grace. Her movements, though born from no formal training, struck with the desperation and intensity of a woman knowing that the life she carried was under a shadow darker than any mere bullet or blade. Blood mingled with dust beneath their feet, an offering paid in sweat and pain to the gods of this wild land. A cruel figure loomed through the chaos, a man whose face was carved by cruelty and broken oaths, the shard of Selene's haunted past. His eyes gleamed with cold fire, a predator emboldened by years of merciless pursuit. He stalked toward her with a cruel smile, as if savoring the inevitable moment when he could snuff out hope itself. Nawel's gaze locked with the man's, a silent vow flaring between them, fierce and unbreakable. Every breath between them, thick with threat and ancient grudges. The warrior steadied himself for the confrontation that had been years in the making. Around them, the battle seemed to slow, as if the land itself held its breath. The clamor faded to a tense silence, broken only by the ragged breathing of combatants pushed to their limits. Selene's eyes blazed with defiance, though the weight of the moment pulled at her soul like a relentless tide. The man lunged. Cruel intentions flashed like lightning in his strike. Nawel met the blow head-on, their weapons locking in a clash of strength and will. Metal hissed, muscles tensed, and sweat slicked brows as the duel unfolded. A brutal dance where every movement could mean life or death. The camp's distant cries and shouts became a fading echo, swallowed by the immediacy of the battle between two fates intertwined by blood, vengeance, and an unborn legacy. In the thick of the struggle, Selene's breath caught. A sharp cry escaped her lips as pain seared through her. The child she bore stirred violently, a reminder that beyond this war waged by men, a fragile hope fought for survival inside her. Nawel's eyes widened, but his resolve did not waver. The man before him was ruthless, but he was not the only force shaping destiny this night. The clash intensified, blows trading faster, harder. The simmering rage beneath Nawel's steady exterior finally broke free in a fierce roar. Each strike carried the weight of countless ancestors, a rebellion against the darkness threatening to consume what little light remained. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the tumult. Nawel faltered for a heartbeat. An unexpected blow grazed him, sharp and unforgiving. Blood blossomed across his side, searing pain shooting through his body like wildfire. The air around him tightened. The strength in his limbs wavered, the world tilting on a knife's edge. Pain surged, but so did determination. Nawel's breath came ragged, his vision blurred at the edges, yet his spirit burned with unyielding fire. The survival of Selene, their child, the tribe, everything depended on his next move. The assassin's eyes gleamed triumphantly, sensing the hunter's wound, but Nawel's hands clenched the weapon tighter. The fight was far from over. As the battle roared on around them, the shouts and gunfire grew distant to Nawel's narrowing focus. The world closed in on the agonizing heat in his side, the strained rhythm of his pounding heart. His knees threatened to buckle, and the desert earth beneath seemed suddenly too far and urgent. The baby's cry pierced the chaos, a fragile sound heralding both life's tenacity and the shadow's threat. The camp's defenders stood shattered, but unbroken, their voices rising in a defiant roar amid the storm. Yet beneath the thunder of battle lay the bitter truth. Nawel was gravely wounded, his strength fading with each breath. The night hung heavy, thick with smoke and blood, and the raw weight of loss and hope entwined. A fragile thread of survival trembled between life and death. And as the first light of dawn threatened to break, the question burned through the darkness, unanswered and haunting. Would Nawel live to protect the future they had all fought so desperately to preserve? Night's veil hung heavy over the scorched earth where the bloodied camp lay silent but on edge. Nawel leaned against a fractured mesquite, breath ragged yet fierce, the wound across his side burning like wildfire with every heartbeat. Around him, the air still throbbed with echoes of gunfire and clashing steel, shadows of the battle that had raged until very recently. His eyes found Celine, standing resolute not far off, cradling the infant wrapped in threadbare cloth, whose peculiar birthmark caught the flickering firelight, an emblem of ancient prophecy and whispered legend. Though pain lanced through him, Nawel willed himself to strength, drawing deep on the well of Apache endurance and the sacred oath he'd made the moment that child first cried in a breathing world fraught with peril. The war-scarred land had sung its brutal requiem, but the fiercest battle, one for hope, for legacy, was only at its crescendo. Celine stepped forward, her voice as steady as the steady wind across the mesas. They came with fire and death to claim what they feared, the life growing inside her, inside us. But we are not so easily broken. Nawel nodded, lips tight, shadows darkening beneath his eyes. His mind raced. The Sada's leader was fallen, but the violent echoes lingered, fracturing into angry cries that still challenged peace's fragile edge. Tina appeared, moving swiftly through the clearing, her eyes sharp and scanning. The children are safe. The loyal scouts held the path. The betrayers, those who turned their backs, are dealt with. But the cost was sharp. Nawel's gaze traveled the battered faces of their few survivors, the faithful few who stood against not just foes, but treachery from within. The sting of betrayal cut deeper than any blade. "We stand at dawn's shadow," Nawel said, voice carrying the weight of command and a father's fierce protectiveness. "Our enemies fell because they did not understand the strength of unity, nor the fire that fuels a mother's heart." Celine's eyes softened with exhaustion, but sparkled with a newfound steel. "This child, our son, is not just flesh and blood. He carries with him the promise that the wild frontier can still hear the cries of those who dare to dream peace." From the smoky edges, Tina lowered her weapon, her breath slow, steady. The tribe will rally to us now, bound not just by blood, but by the story we carry, a story they will tell in fireside whispers for generations. Nowell shifted, feeling the ache in his side, but seeing beyond pain, to a horizon where wounds could heal, where the legacy of love and resilience would outlast the harshest winter. His hand brushed the infant's soft cheek, a tether to life's fragile hope. The messenger's ultimatum, still fresh in memory, was now ashes beneath the resolute spirit of those who refused fear's command. "Celine," Nahuel said softly, "we built our family from danger's ashes. The shadow tried to silence us, but it found only the roar of an unyielding spirit." Celine's gaze met his, dark and unflinching. "And from this night forward, we keep watch, not as hunted, but as guardians." Together, they turned toward the sleeping faces of their tribe, those who had fallen and those who remained, each scar a testament to sacrifice, each quiet moment a seed of hope. The sun's cry broke the night again, small but fierce. The dawn, herald of a new world, woven from pain, courage, and the unbroken bond between a mother, a warrior, and their child. Noel lifted his chin, breath deepening with clarity, his words a solemn vow carved into the very silence around them. "We are the frontier's voice. We are the last light in this wild darkness. The West may tremble, but it will not silence the hope we carry." Celine pressed close, resting her forehead against his, their shadows merging beneath stars that witnessed ancient struggles and new beginnings. The land was quiet now, but beneath its stillness lay a fertile promise of healing, of unity, and of a future shaped by those brave enough to defy the relentless wind of history. Together, standing beneath the vast infinite sky, Noel, Celine, and their son began the first footsteps of a journey beyond survival, a journey to silence the chaos of the Wild West with the enduring strength of family, honor, and peace. The echo of gunfire faded into memory, replaced by the soft murmur of life reclaiming its fragile throne in the heart of the desert. And as the sun crested the horizon, spilling gold across cracked earth and weary souls, the frontier's shattered spirits found solace, not in conquest or vengeance, but in a bond that promised to quiet even the wildest echoes of the past. Their story was no longer one of darkness chased by light, but of light forged through darkness, silencing the Wild West, one brave heart at a time.